The medical bay of the Imperial Starship Vengeance smelled like antiseptic and desperation. I remember that smell better than I remember my own mother's face. It's funny, the things that stick with you. The way the recycled air carried that sharp chemical bite. The hum of the diagnostic machines that never seemed to stop. The way the lighting was always too bright, too clinical, like they were trying to burn away the bad news with pure white fluorescence. My name is Elias Vance. At the time, I was 32 years old, a bioengineer from Earth, and I had been assigned to the Valther Empire's Royal Medical Team for exactly 6 months. That's not a long time in the grand scheme of things. Not long enough to understand the politics, the protocols, the way the Empire breathed and bled and broke. But it was long enough to understand one thing very clearly. Princess Zareth was dying. Not in the way that makes the monitors flatline, not in the way that makes the surgeons scramble. No, she was dying in the way that matters more to an empire than a heartbeat. She was dying of failure, the failure of her bloodline, the failure of her purpose, the failure of her very existence as a royal heir. And there was nothing anyone could do about it. The Valther Empire spanned 17 systems. They'd been the dominant power in this quadrant for over 3 centuries, their influence stretching across star clusters like a web of iron and ambition. They were humanoid, mostly, taller than the average Earth human, with skin that shifted through subtle shades of blue and silver depending on their emotional state. Their eyes were large and luminous, capable of seeing deeper into the electromagnetic spectrum than any human eye could manage. They had technology that made Earth's finest achievements look like children playing with blocks. But for all their power, for all their brilliance, they had one weakness that they couldn't engineer their way out of. Royal blood. The Valther royal family carried a genetic marker that was ancient, precious, and increasingly rare. It was what allowed them to interface directly with their ships, their cities, their very technology. Without it, the empire couldn't function. Without it, the bond between ruler and realm would break. And every generation, that marker grew fainter, diluted by centuries of careful breeding that had, ironically, narrowed the gene pool to a thread. Princess Zareth was the last hope, the last pure-blooded royal. And the medical scans had just confirmed what everyone had been dreading for years. Her reproductive system was incompatible with the genetic requirements. The markers she carried, while strong in her own body, would not survive transmission to offspring. Any child she conceived would be a half-blood, a term I learned carried the weight of a curse. Half-bloods couldn't interface with the technology. Half-bloods couldn't rule. Half-bloods were, in the eyes of the Imperial Council, worse than nothing. They were a reminder of what had been lost. The Empire would end with her. Unless something changed. Unless someone changed it. The day I first met Princess Zareth, I was in the medical bay, running simulations on the genetic data we'd collected. It was late. Ship time was irrelevant in deep space, but my body still operated on Earth cycles, and it was telling me I should have been asleep hours ago. I heard the doors open before I saw her. They hissed, the way all Imperial doors did, with that soft pneumatic sigh that always reminded me of a dying breath. I didn't look up from my console. I was too focused on the data, on the endless permutations of nucleotides that refused to form the patterns I needed. Dr. Vance. Her voice was soft, musical in a way that didn't quite fit the Valther standard. There was something human about it, something that made me look up. And then I couldn't look away. Princess Zareth was not what I expected. I'd seen hollows, of course. Everyone had seen hollows. She was the face of the Empire, the symbol of hope for 17 systems. The hollows showed her in ceremonial robes, her silver-blue skin gleaming under carefully positioned lights, her luminous eyes gazing into the distance with the serene confidence of someone who had never known doubt. The woman standing in my medical bay was nothing like that. Her skin was pale, paler than the hollows suggested, with a faint gray undertone that spoke of sleepless nights and constant stress. Her eyes, those famous luminous eyes, were dull, tired, ringed with dark circles that no amount of imperial cosmetics could hide. She wore simple robes, not the ceremonial garments I'd seen in the hollows, but the practical clothing of someone who had given up on pretense. She was beautiful. Even exhausted, even diminished, she was beautiful in a way that made my chest ache. But more than that, she was sad. The kind of sad that settles into your bones and becomes part of who you are. Your Highness, I stood quickly, my chair scraping against the floor. The sound was jarring in the quiet of the medical bay. I wasn't expecting. I know, she waved a hand, dismissing my concern. I came to see the human, the one they brought from Earth to solve the impossible. There was no malice in her voice, just exhaustion, just acceptance. They told me you were brilliant, she continued, moving closer. Her footsteps were silent on the polished floor. They told me you were the best geneticist in the Terran Alliance. They told me you could fix anything. I swallowed hard. They may have exaggerated, Your Highness. Did they? She stopped in front of my console, her eyes scanning the data I'd been working on. I watched her face as she read the simulations, the endless cycles of failure that I'd been cataloging for weeks. I've seen these before, she said quietly. I've seen every possible combination, every potential solution. There's nothing that works. Is there, Doctor? I should have lied. I should have offered her hope even if it was false. That's what doctors do, isn't it? We offer hope even when there isn't any. We pretend because the alternative is too terrible to face. But looking at her, standing there with the weight of an empire on her shoulders and the quiet resignation of someone who had accepted their fate, I couldn't lie. No, Your Highness, there's nothing in the current data that suggests a viable solution. She nodded slowly. I thought so. And then she did something that broke my heart. She smiled. It was a small smile, a fragile smile, the smile of someone who had long ago stopped fighting and was simply waiting for the end. Thank you for being honest, Dr. Vance. That's more than most people give me. She turned to leave. Your Highness. She stopped, looked back. And that's when I said something I had no business saying, something that would change everything. Your Highness, if I may, the data I've been working with is the data we've collected from Valther sources, but I've been thinking, what if we're looking at the wrong data? Her eyes narrowed. What do you mean? I mean, I said, my heart pounding, what if the problem isn't your genetics? What if the problem is the genetics of the potential fathers? She stared at me for a long moment. Then she laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was bitter, sharp, the laugh of someone who had heard every possible suggestion and dismissed them all. You're suggesting I find a non-Valther mate. Doctor, the Council would never allow it. A half-blood is bad enough. A hybrid. That would be, she shook her head, that would be unthinkable. Not a hybrid, I said quickly, a human. The silence that followed was absolute. A human, she repeated slowly. You're suggesting I mate with a human. I'm suggesting, I said, choosing my words carefully, that human genetics might be compatible in a different way. We're not as different from Valthers as people think. I've been running cross-species simulations for months. There's a possibility, a small one, but it's a possibility that doesn't exist in the current data. She walked back to my console. This time she didn't look at the screen. She looked at me. Dr. Vance, do you understand what you're suggesting? The political implications, the scandal. The Empire would never accept a human as the consort of the throne. They would never accept a human-blooded heir. Would they accept no heir at all? The question hung in the air between us. I watched the emotions play across her face, the flash of anger, the surge of hope, the quick suppression of that hope as reality reasserted itself. You're asking me to gamble everything, she said quietly. The Empire, the succession, Everything my family has built for 300 years on a possibility. I'm asking you to consider it, Your Highness, that's all." She was silent for a long time, then so quietly I almost didn't hear it. "Show me." I showed her. I showed her the simulations, the carefully constructed models that suggested human DNA might fill the gaps in the Valther royal markers. I showed her the epigenetic possibilities, the potential for gene expression that didn't exist in pure Valther combinations. I showed her everything I had. And when I was done, she looked at me with something I hadn't seen in her eyes before. "Hope. Dr. Vance," she said slowly, "I need you to understand something. If we do this, if we pursue this path, there will be consequences for you, for me, for everyone involved. The Council will fight it. The military will resist it. The Empire may never forgive us." "I understand, Your Highness." "Do you? Do you understand what it means to be the focus of an empire's hatred? To have every failure blamed on you? To be the reason the Valther Empire ends?" I met her gaze. "I understand that you're already the focus of an empire's hatred, Your Highness. They just hide it better because you're the last hope. If we do nothing, you'll be remembered as the one who let the empire die. If we try and fail, you'll be remembered as the one who tried. At least you'll have fought." She stared at me for a long moment, then slowly she smiled. "You're a strange creature, Dr. Vance." "Thank you, Your Highness." I didn't say it was a compliment. And that's when I knew. I knew that this woman, this princess carrying the weight of 17 systems on her shoulders, was going to change everything. And I knew that I was going to help her. The weeks that followed were chaos, absolute unrelenting chaos. I worked day and night, building the case for human Valther genetic compatibility. I pored over every piece of data I could find, cross-referencing human and Valther genome maps, running simulations that took hours to complete. I documented everything, creating a mountain of evidence that would either save the Empire or doom it. Princess Zareth worked just as hard on her side of things. She met with advisors, counselors, military leaders. She argued, pleaded, threatened. She used every ounce of her authority to keep the investigation quiet, to keep the council from shutting it down before it could begin. And slowly, against all odds, it began to work. The genetic simulations were promising, more than promising. They showed a potential for compatibility that none of us had expected. Human DNA, it turned out, had a flexibility that Valther genetics lacked, a capacity to adapt, to fill gaps, to create new patterns where none existed before. But there was a catch. There's always a catch. The compatibility only worked if the genetic donor was a specific type of human, someone with a particular genetic marker, one that was incredibly rare even by Earth standards, a marker that had been identified only a handful of times in human history, a marker that, according to the imperial medical records I carried. I found out the same way the princess found out, through a routine medical screening, the kind that all imperial personnel underwent. I'd submitted my samples without thinking, without understanding the implications. And then the results came back. "Dr. Vance." I looked up from my console to find Princess Zareth standing in the doorway of the medical bay. Her expression was unreadable. "Your Highness." "Walk with me." I followed her through the corridors of the Vengeance, past the endless maze of bulkheads and hatches and airlocks. The ship was massive, a city in space, and I'd never been to half of it. But the princess led me confidently, her footsteps sure and steady, until we reached a part of the ship I'd never seen. The garden. I didn't know the Vengeance had a garden, but there it was, a vast chamber filled with plants from a dozen different worlds. Bioluminescent flowers cast soft blue and purple light across the space, and the air was thick with the scent of strange, alien blossoms. In the center of the garden was a fountain, water flowing upward in defiance of gravity, before cascading down into a pool of liquid silver. "You've seen the results," Princess Zareth said quietly. "You know what they mean." I nodded slowly. "Yes, Your Highness, I've seen them." "You're the only compatible donor. The only human in this quadrant, possibly in the entire Terran Alliance, who could be the father of a Valther heir." "I understand." She turned to face me. In the soft light of the garden, her skin seemed to glow. Her eyes, those luminous eyes, were fixed on mine. "Dr. Vance, I'm not going to order you to do this. I'm not going to command you or threaten you or use my authority to force your compliance. If you say no, I'll accept that. I'll find another way. But I need you to understand what's at stake." "Your Highness, I'm not finished." She held up a hand. "I need you to understand that this isn't just about creating an heir. This is about saving the Empire, about preserving everything my people have built, about giving 17 systems a future that doesn't end in chaos and collapse. I'm asking you to do something that no human has ever done before. I'm asking you to be the father of a Valther heir. I'm asking you to change the course of history." Her voice cracked slightly, just at the edges. "And I'm asking you," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper, "to be my partner in this. Not just my consort, not just the father of my children, my partner. Someone who will stand beside me through everything that's coming. Because I can't do this alone, Elias. I've been alone for so long, and I can't do this alone." I stared at her. For a moment I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. "You're asking me to marry you," I said finally. "You're asking me to be your husband." "I'm asking you to be my equal," she corrected. "I'm asking you to be the one person in the entire empire who stands beside me, not below me. I'm asking you to be my partner in every sense of the word." And in that moment, I understood something I'd never understood before. This wasn't about politics. It wasn't about genetics. It wasn't even about saving the empire. This was about connection. This was about two people, from two different worlds, finding something in each other that they couldn't find anywhere else. "Is that your answer?" I asked. "Is that what you're proposing?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, that's my answer, that's my proposal." "And if I say yes?" She smiled. It was the first real smile I'd ever seen on her face. "If you say yes, then we have a lot of work to do." We had to keep it quiet. That was the first rule. No one could know what we were planning. Not the council, not the military, not the endless parade of advisors and officials who watched our every move. If word got out, it would be over before it began. The political opposition would crush us, and the empire would fall into chaos. So we met in secret. Late at night, when the ship was quiet and everyone else was asleep, we met in the garden. We talked for hours, sharing stories about our lives, our families, our dreams. I told her about Earth, about the oceans and the mountains and the endless blue sky. She told me about Valther Prime, about the crystal cities and the shimmering seas, and the way the sky turned purple at sunset. It wasn't romantic. Not at first. We were strangers, two people thrown together by circumstances neither of us had chosen. We were awkward and uncertain, stumbling through conversations that felt like we were reading from a script. But slowly, night by night, something changed. We stopped being strangers. We started being friends. And then we started being something more. I remember the first time she touched me. We were sitting in the garden, watching the bioluminescent flowers pulse with soft light, and she reached out and placed her hand on mine. Her skin was warm, warmer than a human's, and her fingers were long and delicate. She didn't say anything. She just held my hand, and we sat there in silence, watching the flowers bloom and fade and bloom again. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever experienced. "Elias," she said finally, her voice soft, "I need to tell you something." "What?" I've never been with anyone like this. The Valther royal family, we don't form attachments. We're bred for purpose, not for love." The idea that I could feel this way about someone, that I could want to be with someone because I choose to, not because I'm ordered to. It's strange. Strange good or strange bad. She laughed. It was a beautiful sound. Strange wonderful, she said. Strange terrifying, strange everything. Good, I squeezed her hand. That's how it's supposed to be. Is it? Yeah, it's supposed to feel like falling. It's supposed to feel like you're standing on the edge of something, and you don't know if you're going to fly or crash, but you have to jump anyway. She looked at me, her luminous eyes reflecting the soft light of the flowers. And if we crash? Then we crash together. She didn't say anything else. She just leaned in, slowly, carefully, and pressed her lips to mine. It was the softest kiss I've ever experienced, more tentative than passionate, more questioning than certain. She was learning, exploring, and I let her set the pace. I didn't push, didn't rush. I just let her discover what she wanted. When she pulled back, her eyes were shining. Elias, she whispered, I think I'm falling. Me too, I said, me too. But you can't keep secrets forever. The first person to find out was the Empress. That's what the Valther ruler was called, the Empress. She'd been the sovereign for over a century, her reign long and prosperous. She was also the mother of Princess Zareth and the architect of the Empire's genetic crisis. She was also, I learned, a force of nature. She arrived on the Vengeance without warning, her personal ship docking with the military vessel like a predator descending on its prey. I was in the medical bay when I heard the announcement. The Empress was aboard, and she demanded to see her daughter. I didn't have to guess what that meant. Princess Zareth found me in my quarters an hour later. She was pale, her skin tinged with gray, and her hands were shaking. She knows, she said, everything she knows. I stood up, moved to her. What did she say? She said I was a fool. She said I was destroying the Empire. She said. She stopped, swallowed hard. She said she would disown me, strip me of my title, leave me with nothing. Your Highness. Don't, she held up a hand. Don't call me that, not now, not. Not when everything is falling apart. Zara. She looked up at me, her eyes wide. That's what I want to call you, I said. If this is the end, if everything we've built is falling apart, I want to face it with you, as equals, as partners, as whatever we are to each other. She stared at me for a long moment, then slowly she nodded. Okay, she whispered, okay. The Empress's chambers were the most ornate I'd ever seen. Even on a warship, even in the middle of deep space, she had to have her luxury. The walls were covered in tapestries that must have been centuries old, their threads woven with scenes of Valther history. The floor was carpeted in something soft and silvery that glowed faintly underfoot. The air was thick with incense, a sweet, cloying smell that made my head spin. And in the center of it all, seated on a throne that seemed to have been carved from a single crystal, was the Empress. She was smaller than I expected. Frail almost. Her skin was wrinkled, her eyes dimmed with age. But there was power in her, an energy that crackled through the air like static electricity. So, she said, her voice low and cold, this is the human who dares to destroy my empire. Your Majesty, I bowed, keeping my voice steady. I assure you that was never my intention. Your intention, she laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. Your intention is irrelevant. What matters is what you've done. What matters is the chaos you've unleashed. Mother, Princess Zareth stepped forward, her chin raised. Elias has done nothing wrong. He's been trying to help. He's been trying to save the Empire. Save the Empire by breeding with a human, by tainting the royal bloodline with alien genetics. You call that saving the Empire? I call it giving the Empire a chance to survive. The Empress rose from her throne. For a moment I thought she was going to strike her daughter, but instead she just stood there, trembling with barely contained rage. 200 years, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. 200 years I have ruled this empire. 200 years I have watched it grow, watched it prosper, watched it become the dominant power in this quadrant. And now you want to throw it all away. For a human, for a man who doesn't even understand what he's offering. I understand, I said quietly. The Empress turned to me, her eyes blazing. You understand. You understand nothing. You don't understand what it means to be Valther. You don't understand what it means to carry the weight of an empire on your shoulders. You don't understand what it means to sacrifice everything for the good of your people. Your Majesty, I said, meeting her gaze, you're right. I don't understand what it means to be Valther, but I understand what it means to love someone. I understand what it means to stand beside someone when everything is falling apart. I understand what it means to fight for something you believe in. Love, the Empress laughed again, but this time there was something else in her voice, something that sounded almost like despair. You think love is enough. You think love can save an empire. No, I said, but I think hope can, and that's what your daughter has. Hope. Hope that there's a future beyond this crisis. Hope that the empire can survive. Hope that there's something worth fighting for. The Empress stared at me for a long moment. Then slowly she turned to her daughter. Is this what you want? She asked. Is this truly what you want? Princess Zareth met her mother's gaze. Yes, this is what I want. I want to fight for the empire. I want to save it. And I want to do it with him. The Empress was silent for a long time. Then slowly she sat back down on her throne. I should stop you, she said quietly. I should have you both arrested. I should put an end to this madness before it destroys everything. But you won't. No, the Empress sighed, and for the first time I saw her age, saw the weariness, the exhaustion, the weight of centuries on her shoulders. I won't because I was you once. I was young and in love and convinced that nothing could stop me, and I was wrong, but I never got the chance to prove it. I never got the chance to fight for what I believed in. Mother, don't, the Empress held up a hand. Don't thank me. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this because there's a part of me that still believes in hope. That still believes that maybe, just maybe, love can change things. She looked at me, her eyes narrow. You have 6 months, she said. 6 months to prove that this works. If you fail, if the genetic compatibility doesn't hold, then you will be exiled. Both of you. You'll be stripped of your titles and sent to the farthest corner of the empire, never to return. And if we succeed? The Empress smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had seen too much, done too much, lost too much. If you succeed, then you'll have done what I couldn't. You'll have saved the empire. And maybe, just maybe, you'll have saved me too. The ceremony was small, private. Just the 3 of us in the garden, surrounded by bioluminescent flowers and the soft glow of alien stars. Elias Vance, the Empress said, her voice formal and ancient, do you agree to be the consort of Princess Zareth? Do you agree to stand beside her, support her, and fight for her and her people? I do. Do you agree to father her children, to provide the genetic material necessary to ensure the survival of the Valther Empire? I do. Do you agree to accept the consequences of your choice, whatever they may be? I looked at Princess Zareth, at the woman who had become my partner, my friend, my everything. I do. The Empress nodded. Then I pronounce you bound, by blood, by duty, by love. May the stars guide you. And just like that, it was done. We weren't married in the human sense. There was no ceremony, no rings, no vows, but we were bound. Bound by purpose, bound by duty, bound by something deeper than any words could capture. The first night we spent together, we didn't talk about the empire. We didn't talk about genetics or politics or the future. We just held each other in the darkness, feeling the warmth of our bodies pressed together, and let ourselves believe just for a moment that everything was going to be okay. Elias, Zara whispered, her voice soft in the darkness. Yeah. Thank you. For what? For believing in me, for fighting for me, for making me feel like I'm not alone. I pulled her closer, feeling her heart beat against my chest. You're not alone, I said. You'll never be alone again. But we still had to prove it worked. The genetic compatibility wasn't just about creating a child. It was about creating an heir who could carry the royal markers, who could interface with the technology, who could rule the empire. Without that, everything we'd done was meaningless. So we worked. Night after night we worked. We ran simulations, tested samples, analyzed data. We pushed ourselves to the limit and beyond, sacrificing sleep, food, sanity in pursuit of the one thing that mattered. And finally, after months of work, we found it. The genetic combination was possible. More than possible, it was promising. The human DNA filled the gaps in the Valther markers, creating a hybrid genome that was stronger than either parent's alone. But there was still one test left, one final confirmation. The pregnancy test. I remember the day we found out. I was in the medical bay, running the final simulations when Zara walked in. She was pale, her hands shaking, and there was something in her eyes that I couldn't identify. Elias, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air between us. For a moment I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Are you sure? I managed finally. I'm sure. She moved closer and I saw tears in her eyes. The test was positive. I'm carrying your child. I pulled her into my arms, holding her as tightly as I dared. She was trembling, and I felt her tears on my neck. Zara, I whispered, Zara, this is incredible. I know, her voice was muffled against my chest. I know, but Elias, I'm scared. What if something goes wrong? What if the child doesn't carry the markers? What if? Hey, I pulled back, cupping her face in my hands. Hey, look at me. She looked up, her eyes shimmering with tears. We've done everything we can, I said. We've prepared for this. We've planned for this. And whatever happens, we'll face it together. That's what we do, right? She nodded slowly. Right, she whispered, that's what we do. Part 2, the weight of the world. 9 months is a long time. For a human, it's the standard gestation period. For a Valther, it's slightly longer, 10 months on average. For a hybrid, a human Valther hybrid with no history, no precedent, no idea what to expect. 9 months is an eternity. Zara's pregnancy was different from anything the Imperial medical staff had ever seen. Her body reacted to the hybrid child in ways that none of the simulations had predicted. There were complications, scares, moments when we thought we might lose everything. I spent more time in the medical bay than I did anywhere else, my eyes fixed on the monitors that tracked the life growing inside her. But through it all, Zara was strong, stronger than I could have imagined. She didn't complain. She didn't give up. She faced every challenge with the same quiet determination she'd shown from the beginning, refusing to let anything break her spirit. This child, she said one night, her hand resting on the swell of her belly, this child will be the future of the empire, and I will not let it fail. The moment her contractions began, I was by her side. Elias, she reached out, grasping my hand with surprising strength. Stay with me. I'm not going anywhere, I promised. Even if, I squeezed her hand, I'm not going anywhere. The birthing chamber was pristine, filled with advanced medical equipment that hummed and beeped softly, creating a backdrop of sterile efficiency. But I barely noticed any of it. My focus was entirely on Zara, on the pain that flashed across her face, on the way her nails dug into my palm, on the determination that burned in her luminous eyes despite everything. The medical team moved around us, a blur of silver and white uniforms. They were the best in the empire, hand-picked for their expertise in hybrid births, but even they looked uncertain as they monitored the readings, exchanging glances that spoke of their anxiety. "Push," the lead physician commanded. "Push, Your Highness." Zara screamed. I've heard a lot of sounds in my life. The roar of spaceship engines, the screech of metal tearing apart, the silence of deep space. Nothing compared to the sound she made in that moment. It was primal, raw, the sound of life being brought into existence through sheer force of will. One more push, one more. And then, a cry, sharp, clear, impossibly loud in the quiet of the chamber. I looked up and the world seemed to stop. The physician held a small, squirming bundle in her arms. A child, a baby, our child. "It's a girl," the physician announced. She's perfect." Zara collapsed against the pillows, her breath coming in ragged gasps, but she was smiling. For the first time in what felt like forever, she was truly, genuinely smiling. "Let me see," she whispered. "Let me see her." The physician brought the baby closer, and Zara reached out with trembling hands. I watched as she took the child in her arms, her expression shifting from exhaustion to wonder. "She's beautiful," Zara breathed. "Elias, she's beautiful." I leaned in, looking at the tiny face of my daughter. She had her mother's skin tone, that subtle shade of silver blue, but there was something human in her features, something that reminded me of my own family. "She has your eyes," I said, "your mother's eyes." "Are you sure?" Zara looked up at me, her eyes shimmering with tears. "Are you sure she's—" I understood what she was asking, the question that had haunted us for months, the genetic markers, the royal bloodline, the ability to interface with the technology. "She's perfect," I said, "just like you said." But we didn't know for sure. The test results would take hours. Hours of waiting, of hoping, of praying to whatever gods might be listening. Hours of wondering if everything we'd done had been for nothing. I stayed with Zara, holding her hand, watching the baby sleep in her arms. The child was quiet now, exhausted from the ordeal of being born. "What do we name her?" I asked softly. "I don't know." Zara looked down at the baby. I didn't dare to hope that she would survive. I never thought beyond that moment. "We can wait," I said. "We can take our time." "No," she shook her head. "No, I want to name her now, while we're together, while we're a family." We sat in silence thinking. "Lyra," Zara said finally. "Her name should be Lyra." "Why Lyra?" "The Lyra constellation," she explained. "It's the one that appears in the sky of both our worlds. It's the one thing that's the same, no matter where you are. It's the connection between Earth and Valthar. Between humans and Valthars, between you and me." I smiled, feeling tears prick at my eyes. "Lyra, it's perfect." "You really think so?" "I know so." We were still holding each other when the physician returned, a data tablet clutched in her hands. Her expression was unreadable. "Your Highness," she said, her voice carefully controlled, "the test results are in." Zara stiffened, and the child carries the royal markers, both of them. She's fully compatible with the Imperial technology. I felt the breath leave my lungs in a rush. Zara stared at the physician, her eyes wide. She's an heir," Zara whispered, "a true heir." "Yes, Your Highness." And then Zara laughed. It wasn't a quiet laugh. It wasn't a restrained laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had been holding their breath for months, years, decades, and had finally been allowed to exhale. The sound filled the room, echoing off the sterile walls, and I couldn't help but join in. "Elias," she said, turning to me, her eyes bright with joy. "Elias, we did it. We actually did it." I pulled her into my arms, careful not to disturb Lyra, and held her as tightly as I could. "We did it," I said, "together just like we promised." The news spread through the empire like wildfire. The princess had given birth to a healthy heir, an heir that carried the royal markers, an heir that could interface with the imperial technology, an heir that represented the future of the Valthar Empire. And the father was human. The reaction was mixed. There were celebrations, of course. The imperial loyalists, the ones who had always supported the royal family, they were overjoyed. They lit the cities of 17 systems with fireworks and light shows, celebrating the birth of a new hope. But there were others, the ones who had opposed the union from the beginning, the ones who saw a human father as a corruption of the royal bloodline. They were not happy, and they made their displeasure known. There were protests, there were threats, there was talk of rebellion, of removing the princess from the line of succession. But through it all, Zara stood firm. "Let them speak," she said when I expressed my concern. "Let them say whatever they want, I don't care. Lyra is the future of the empire, and nothing they say will change that. But what if they try something? What if they try to hurt her? Then they'll have to go through me." She looked at me, her eyes hard. "I will not let anyone harm my daughter, not while I'm still breathing." And so we waited. We waited as Lyra grew, as her features sharpened into a perfect blend of human and Valther. We waited as she learned to smile, to laugh, to take her first steps. We waited as the empire adjusted to the idea of a hybrid heir, watching and waiting for any sign that the child was anything other than perfect. She was. Lyra was a wonder, a miracle. She had her mother's grace and her father's determination. She was smart, curious, fiercely independent. And from the moment she was old enough to understand, she was drawn to the technology. The first time I saw her interface with the imperial systems, I almost couldn't believe it. She was only 3 years old, barely old enough to speak in complete sentences, but she reached out and touched the console, and the whole room lit up. "Look, Papa," she said, her voice full of wonder. "I made the pretty lights." I stared at her, my heart pounding. "You did, sweetie. You made the pretty lights. What are they for?" "They're for helping people, for keeping the empire safe." She nodded seriously as if she understood. "Okay, I'll help too." And I knew in that moment that everything we'd done had been worth it. But the empire was still divided. The council, the military, the powerful families who had always resented the royal family's dominance, they were not willing to accept a hybrid ruler. They saw Lyra as a threat, a corruption of everything they believed in, and they were willing to do whatever it took to remove her from the line of succession. The first attempt came when Lyra was 5 years old. She was in the garden, playing with the bioluminescent flowers, when a group of armed soldiers burst into the chamber. They were wearing the colors of the opposition, and their weapons were drawn. "Give us the child," the leader demanded. "Give us the hybrid and no one gets hurt." Zara stepped forward, placing herself between the soldiers and Lyra. "You will not touch my daughter," she said, her voice cold and steady. "Not while I'm still standing. Your Highness, I'm warning you." "I said you will not touch her." Zara raised her hand, and the air around her began to shimmer. "I am the heir to the Valther throne. I carry the royal markers. I can access the systems of this ship with a thought, and I will not hesitate to use that power to protect my daughter." The soldiers hesitated. They'd heard the stories, of course. Everyone had heard the stories. The princess was said to be the most powerful royal in generations, her ability to interface with the technology unmatched by anyone except her mother. "You wouldn't," the leader said, but there was uncertainty in his voice. "You wouldn't use your power against your own people." "I would," Zara said. "I would destroy every one of you without hesitation, and I would not lose a single minute of sleep over it. So I'm going to give you one chance. Leave now and I will forget this ever happened. Stay and I will annihilate you." The soldiers looked at each other, their resolve crumbling. "Fine," the leader said, lowering his weapon. "Fine, but this isn't over, Your Highness. The Empire will never accept a hybrid heir, and we'll be back." "I'm counting on it." The soldiers fled, and Zara sank to her knees, trembling. I rushed to her side, helping her up. "Are you okay?" I asked. "Are you hurt?" I'm fine, she smiled, but it was strained. I'm fine, I just didn't think they'd actually try something like that, not so soon. Zara. Papa, Lyra's voice was small, uncertain. What happened? Why were those people angry? I crouched down, pulling my daughter into my arms. Some people are scared, I said softly. They're scared of things they don't understand. They're scared of you because you're different. But I'm not bad, Papa. I'm not scary. No, sweetie, you're not bad. You're wonderful. You're the best thing that ever happened to us. But some people don't know how to handle wonderful. They'd rather destroy it than accept it. Lyra was quiet for a moment, processing my words. Then slowly she nodded. Okay, Papa, I understand. But I'm still going to help people. I'm going to show them that I'm not scary. The assassination attempt came when Lyra was 7. We were on a diplomatic mission, visiting a system that had been on the fence about accepting the hybrid heir. The local leaders were supposed to be friendly, supportive, but I'd always had a bad feeling about the whole thing. Something about the way the guards watched us, the way the halls were too quiet, the way the air seemed to crackle with tension. It was Zara who sensed it first. She grabbed my arm, pulling me back just as the first shots rang out. Get down, she screamed, throwing herself on top of Lyra. I hit the ground, pulling my sidearm from its holster. I wasn't a soldier. I'd never been a soldier, but I'd trained for situations like this. Everyone on the Imperial staff had trained for situations like this. The attackers were 4 of them, armed with advanced Valther weapons that could punch through standard armor like paper. They were fast, professional, and they were clearly targeting the royal family. Zara, I shouted, firing blindly in the direction of the attackers. Get Lyra out of here. I can't, she yelled back. They've locked the doors. I cursed under my breath, scrambling to my feet. The attackers were moving closer, their weapons blazing. I could see the determination in their eyes, the fanaticism that drove them forward. But they hadn't counted on one thing. They hadn't counted on the human. I'm not a soldier. I'm a geneticist, a scientist, a man who spent most of his life in a lab. But I'm also a human, and humans have a long history of doing crazy things to protect the people they love. I charged forward, firing my weapon as I ran. My aim was terrible, my shots going wild, but I didn't need to hit them. I just needed to distract them. Elias, no, Zara screamed. But it was too late. I was already in the middle of them, trading blows with soldiers who were twice my size and 3 times my skill. I took hits, a broken rib, a dislocated shoulder, a gash across my forehead that bled into my eyes, but I didn't stop. And neither did Zara. She rose from the ground, her face twisted in fury, and the air around her began to shimmer. The systems of the building responded to her call, the lights flickering, the doors slamming shut, the temperature dropping to near freezing levels. You hurt my husband, she said, her voice cold and terrible. You tried to hurt my daughter. Now you will face the consequences. The attackers barely had time to react before the room exploded into chaos. The lights went out, the floor began to vibrate, and the air itself seemed to thicken. I watched in awe as Zara tore through them with the power of her mind, her abilities unleashed in a way I'd never seen before. And then it was over. The attackers were unconscious, their weapons scattered across the floor. Zara stood in the center of the room, her chest heaving, her eyes blazing with righteous fury. Get the children, she said to me. Get them out of here now. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed Lyra and her younger brother, a boy named Cale who was barely 3 years old, and I ran. That was the turning point. The assassination attempt had failed, but it had also changed everything. The attack on the royal family was a scandal of epic proportions, and it turned public opinion against the opposition. The Empress, my mother-in-law, declared martial law and ordered a massive crackdown on the resistance. Dozens of conspirators were arrested, tried, and executed. And Zara became a symbol. She was no longer just the princess who had married a human. She was the princess who had fought for her family, the princess who had used her power to protect her children, the princess who had proven, once and for all, that love was stronger than hate. "Elias," she said to me one night after everything had settled down, "I never imagined it could be like this. I never imagined I could feel this way." "What way?" "Alive," she said. "I feel alive. I feel like I'm actually living, not just existing. And it's all because of you, because of Lyra, because of Kale, because of everything we've built together." I pulled her into my arms, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "You did this," I said. "You made this happen. You're the one who refused to give up. You're the one who fought for our family. You're the one who believed in us." "I believed in us," she said, "because you believed in me." The years passed and the empire changed. Slowly at first, then faster, the opposition faded. The hybrid heirs were accepted, not just tolerated. Lyra grew up to be a strong, capable young woman, her ability to interface with the imperial systems unmatched by any royal before her. Kale followed in her footsteps, his intelligence and empathy making him a natural leader. And Zara and I, we grew old together. It wasn't always easy. There were challenges, setbacks, moments when everything seemed to be falling apart, but through it all, we held on to each other. "I love you," she whispered to me one night, her voice soft in the darkness. "I love you more than I ever thought possible." "I love you too," I said. "You saved me, you know." "Saved you? Elias, you saved me. I was drowning and you pulled me out of the water. I was dying and you gave me a reason to live." I smiled, pulling her closer. "Then I guess we saved each other." Part 3. The Legacy We Built. I remember the day our daughter, Lyra, became empress. It was a grand ceremony, the kind that would be remembered for generations. The imperial palace was packed with dignitaries from 17 systems, their colorful robes and shining medals creating a tapestry of power and prestige. Zara stood beside me, her hand in mine, watching as our daughter took her place on the throne. "Are you okay?" I asked, squeezing her hand. "I'm fine," she smiled, but I could see the tears in her eyes. I'm so proud of her. Of everything she's become." "Me too." Lyra was beautiful in her ceremonial robes, her silver blue skin glowing under the soft light. She looked every inch the empress she was about to become, her posture straight, her gaze steady. But when her eyes met mine, I saw the little girl who used to chase bioluminescent flowers through the garden. I saw the child who asked too many questions and refused to accept easy answers. I saw the daughter who had grown up to become the hope of an empire. "I'm proud of you," I mouthed silently. Her smile widened just a little, and I knew she'd heard me. By the power vested in me, the empress, my mother-in-law, now elderly and frail but still sharp as a knife, intoned, "I name Lyra Vance as the heir to the Valther throne. May her reign be long and prosperous. May she bring peace to the empire. May she carry the light of hope into the future." The crowd erupted in cheers. The sound was deafening, echoing off the walls of the palace. I watched as Lyra stood, her face serene, her eyes shining with tears she refused to shed. "Thank you," she said, her voice carrying across the vast hall. "Thank you for your faith in me. I promise you I will not let you down. I will fight for this empire. I will protect it with everything I have. And I will ensure that it continues to thrive for generations to come." She paused, looking out at the crowd. "I also want to thank my parents," she said, her voice softening. "My mother, who taught me what it means to fight for what you believe in. And my father, who taught me what it means to love unconditionally. Without them, I would not be standing here today. Without them, the empire would not have survived." The crowd applauded again, and I felt Zara's hand tighten on mine. "She's incredible," I whispered. "She learned from the best," Zara whispered back. That night, after the ceremony was over, we were back in our private quarters. Lyra was busy with the endless details of her new position, but she'd promised to come see us later. "It's strange," Zara said, settling into a chair beside me. "I spent so many years thinking the Empire would end with me. I thought I was the last, the final heir, the one who would watch everything crumble. And now I have a daughter who's empress, a son who's a brilliant diplomat, and a husband who still looks at me like I'm the most beautiful woman in the galaxy." I smiled, reaching over to take her hand. "You are," I said. "You've always been the most beautiful woman in the galaxy, and I'm not just saying that because I'm your husband." "Liar." "Okay, maybe I'm a little biased, but that doesn't make it any less true." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars through the window. The Vengeance was in orbit around Valther Prime, the Imperial homeworld, and the view was breathtaking. "What do you think the future holds?" Zara asked quietly. "For Lyra, for Kale, for the Empire?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I never could have predicted this. I never could have predicted us. I trust them. I trust that they'll make the right choices. And if they don't, then we'll be there to help them." I squeezed her hand. "That's what family does. We support each other. We fight for each other. We never give up on each other." Zara was silent for a long moment. Then slowly she turned to look at me. "Elias," she said, "do you ever regret it? Do you ever regret leaving Earth? Do you ever regret marrying me? Do you ever regret any of it?" I didn't hesitate. "No," I said. "I don't regret a single moment, not one. Every struggle, every challenge, every moment of doubt, it was all worth it, because it led me here, to you, to our children, to this life. Even the assassination attempts. Especially the assassination attempts," I grinned. "They made us stronger. They made us realize what we were fighting for." Zara laughed, that beautiful sound I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. "You're insane," she said. "You know that, right?" "Maybe," I pulled her into my arms. "But I'm your insane, and I always will be." Lyra came to see us an hour later. She was still wearing her ceremonial robes, but she'd taken off the crown and let her hair fall loose around her shoulders. "Mother, Father," she said, embracing us both. "Thank you for being there today. It meant the world to me." "Of course, sweetie," Zara said. "We wouldn't have missed it for anything." "Everything went perfectly," I added. "You were magnificent." Lyra smiled. I was terrified. I couldn't feel my legs for the first 10 minutes. "Neither could we," Zara said. "But you didn't show it. You looked like you were born to be Empress." "I was," Lyra said softly, "because you prepared me. You both did. You taught me what it means to lead with strength and grace. You taught me what it means to fight for what's right. You taught me what it means to love unconditionally." "Now you're going to make me cry," Zara said, blinking rapidly. "Good," Lyra said. "You deserve to cry. You've earned it, both of you." Time passed, as it always does. Lyra grew into her role as Empress, her reign marked by wisdom and compassion. She navigated the political complexities of the Empire with grace, earning the respect of even her most bitter opponents. Kale became a diplomat, traveling to distant worlds and forging alliances that strengthened the Empire's position. He had his mother's charm and his father's determination, and he used both to build bridges where none had existed before. And Zara and I, we grew older. The years took their toll on us both. My hair turned gray, my joints ached, my eyesight began to fail. Zara's skin lost its luster, her movement slowed, her energy waned. But we never stopped loving each other. "Elias," she said to me one night, her voice weak but steady, "I'm tired." I knew what she meant. It wasn't just physical tiredness. It was a tiredness of the soul, a readiness to let go. "I know," I said, holding her hand. "I know, but I'm not ready to let you go. I'm not ready to say goodbye." "You won't have to," she said softly. I'll always be with you in your heart, in your memories. In the children we raise together. I don't want memories, I said, my voice breaking. I want you. I want to grow old with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to. SHH, she reached up, her trembling hand touching my cheek. You've given me everything, Elias, everything I ever wanted and more. You gave me hope when I had none. You gave me love when I thought I was unlovable. You gave me a family, a purpose, a reason to live. And now you need to let me go. I can't. You can. You're the strongest person I know. You always have been. And I need you to be strong now, for me, for our children, for the empire. I held her hand, pressing it to my lips. I love you, I said. I love you more than anything. Thank you, she smiled, her eyes closing. Thank you for everything. She passed away in her sleep that night. I didn't find out until morning when the nurse came to check on her. By then, it was too late. She was gone, gone forever. And I felt like half of me had died too. But I didn't give up. I couldn't. I had children to look after, grandchildren to spoil, an empire to support, and I had a promise to keep. The day of Zara's funeral was the most difficult day of my life. The entire empire mourned. The cities of 17 systems darkened in tribute to the princess who had saved them all. Lyra stood at the podium, her voice steady as she delivered the eulogy. My mother, she said, was the bravest person I ever knew. She faced impossible odds and never backed down. She loved fiercely, fought relentlessly, and never stopped believing in a better future. She taught me what it means to be a leader. She taught me what it means to be a mother. She taught me what it means to be human. I watched my daughter from the front row, my eyes blurred with tears. She looked so much like Zara in that moment. The same strength, the same grace, the same unwavering determination. We will carry her legacy forward, Lyra continued. We will continue the work she started. We will build the empire she dreamed of. And we will never forget the woman who made it all possible. When the ceremony was over, Lyra came to me. Are you okay, Father? She asked softly. I didn't answer. I just pulled her into my arms and let myself cry. I miss her so much, I said, my voice muffled against her shoulder. I miss her so much it hurts. I know, Father, I miss her too, but she's still with us. In everything we do, in everything we are, she's still with us. I pulled back, looking at my daughter's face. Thank you, I said. Thank you for being strong for me, for everyone. You taught me that, she said. You and Mother both, you taught me what it means to be strong. And now here I am. I'm an old man now. My hair is completely white, my body is weak, and I can barely walk without my cane. But my mind is still sharp, my memories still vivid, and my love for my family has never faded. I'm sitting in the garden, the same garden where I first fell in love with Zara. The bioluminescent flowers still bloom, casting their soft blue and purple light across the space. And I can almost see her here, sitting beside me, her hand in mine. Elias, I imagine her saying, are you okay? I'm fine, I say. I'm just thinking about everything, about us, about the empire, about the legacy we built. What do you think of it? What do you think of the legacy we built? I smile, looking up at the stars. I think, I say, that we did something incredible. I think we saved an empire. I think we raised a family. I think we loved each other with everything we had. And I think that's enough. She would laugh, I think. She would laugh and tell me I'm being sentimental, but I'm not. I'm just telling the truth. The truth is, none of this would have been possible without hope. Hope that tomorrow could be better. Hope that love could change things. Hope that two people from different worlds could build something that would last forever. Zara, I say, my voice barely above a whisper, I still love you. I will always love you. And I will never stop believing in the future we built together. I spend my final days in the garden, surrounded by memories and the soft light of bioluminescent flowers. My children visit often, bringing their own children to meet the old man who helped save the empire. Lyra comes every day, her kind eyes reflecting the same determination her mother once had. She loves you, you know, Zara's voice whispers in my mind, just like I loved you. Just like I will always love you. I smile, reaching out my hand as if to touch her. Thank you, I say softly. Thank you for giving me everything. And then I close my eyes, and I let the darkness take me. I'm not afraid. I'm ready. I'm ready to see her again, to hold her hand, to tell her how much she meant to me. And when I open my eyes, I find myself standing in a place of light and warmth. And she's there, waiting for me, her smile brighter than any star. Hello, Elias, she says. I've been waiting for you. Zara, I step toward her, my heart soaring. I've missed you so much. I know, she takes my hand. I know, but we're together now, and we'll never be apart again. We stand together, looking out at a vista of impossible beauty. And in the distance, we see our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, carrying forward the legacy we built together. Thank you, I say, turning to her. Thank you for changing my destiny. No, she says softly, thank you for changing mine.